So let's get to some love stories. Ben and Diane, thank you for joining us.
Thank
You're
you.
Where
welcome.
do you guys live?
Uh, we live in Salt Lake City. We live in South Jordan in Salt Lake City.
Okay, because I was going to say it looks bright and sunny out in where you are, and it is not bright and sunny out where I am. So good. So thank you for joining us at Mountain Time here at the Veterans Breakfast Club. Your daughter, and people may remember, Libby Hegvik was on with us a few weeks ago. She's making a documentary about Donut Dollies. And Diane, you were one of those 627 women who volunteered for the American Red Cross to be, what was it called? Supplemental Recreational Overseas Activities?
Yeah, Supplemental Recreation Activities Overseas, SRAO.
SRAO.
It was commissioned by the Red Cross was commissioned by the Department of Defense to provide the program as part of their morale program in, well, Korea and Vietnam, and modeled somewhat after the old clubmobiles in World War II. And
And
that's the name Donut Dolly came from. I never served a donut. We didn't serve donuts. But they did in World War II. They made them and served them and went to the front lines to do so. We played games with the troops.
you played games with the troops, traveling by Huey helicopter and truck and Jeep throughout South Vietnam. And that's where you met your future husband, who's with us today, Ben. Can I ask you, Diane, why you joined the Donut Dollies?
Well, I was in college, and my sophomore year in college, 1967, I decided that I was going to quit for a while and come back, and I wanted to save the world. I was tired of the rhetoric. And I had an advisor. I had been involved with Red Cross as a youth in the Seattle area, and they had a tremendous youth leadership program there. And I was president and started the Red Cross Club at my high school, at Sammamish High School in Bellevue, Washington. And anyway, I went to my advisor and I said I wanted to quit for a while, but I would be back to school. And he said, in my experience, once you quit, you never come back. And he was also a Red Cross volunteer. And he knew that I was heavily involved with the Red Cross and had designs to work for them later on after I graduated. And he he had just found out about the program, the SRAO program, and told me about it. And the number one requirement was that you be a college graduate. And so that settled it. I said, okay, I'll just change my major and I'll stay right here and finish, and then I'll go. And I wanted to do that because I had considered the Peace Corps and VISTA, Volunteers in Service to America,
Right.
was going on at the time. But I knew that I wanted to work professionally eventually for Red Cross. So anyway, that's how I got involved and I knew I wanted to serve my country. And the young men were over there doing all kinds of stuff to help Freedom Ring, and I thought, well, that sounds like a good plan to me.
It's one thing to be a Vista volunteer or a Peace Corps volunteer, which is, rugged life, not an easy life. It's quite another to go to Vietnam during the war.
True.
Did your parents have anything to say about this?
No, they were very supportive. I mean, yes, they were very supportive. And they were just, my stepmother, I had a stepmother because my own mother died when I was a young girl. My stepmother said, I knew it. She had a sense about me.
Yes.
She was not surprised at all.
You were an adventurous soul.
Yes, I guess.
Yeah. What was your first impression of Vietnam when you landed there?
Well, let me preface this by saying when we had our training, there was nothing about how we would land. And I assumed that we would run from the plane to a foxhole or something, which was not the truth. I mean, I just imagined dodging bullets and rockets, things like that. Well, it was dirty, it was smelly, it was noisy. We landed in Saigon, and we were put up for a few days in a old beat up hotel and had our country orientation at the Red Cross headquarters there. But I did have my first ever in my life pedicure in Saigon.
What year did you arrive, or when did you arrive? What month and year?
In April of 1969.
Okay. Ben, how long had you been in Vietnam in April 1969?
I got there in March of 69.
Okay.
A reconnaissance platoon leader with an air cav troop attached to the 101st. And we arrived in March.
How did you end up in the Army?
Bad judgment. No, I really enjoyed it. I was about to be drafted. I had an education, but I really thought about it at the time that if I left the country, that I would never be able to return, or I should never return if I turned my back when the country called. And so I joined the Army. It was a long wait list to get into the Air Force as the Navy. And so I joined the Army. It worked out well.
Did you intend to make it a career?
No, not at all. But I got in. It was, I enlisted. It was competitive. And for whatever reason, I really liked it. And I had some success, and I got into OCS and went through OCS, and then I got into flight school and just went from there.
What about helicopter piloting did you like?
Every bit of it. Uh, I I was living in a BOQ with some warrant officers that flew, and they wanted to go out and shoot a tank, which in what I was doing, I could make that happen. And I wanted to go fly in a helicopter. And so one Saturday they were getting airtime, and I got into the gunner seat and in a revetment, and I thought sure as the world they would just lift up and pull forward and fly.
Yeah.
And they didn't. They just lifted up and backed out of that revetment. And I just loved it. It almost blew my mind. And so I said, I've got to go do that. And I worked around and eventually got to flight school.
Oh, how interesting. So tell me about your arrival in Vietnam and your first impressions.
When I walked off the plane, I could not, and I grew up in Florida, but I could not believe the heat and the humidity.
Yeah.
I didn't think we'd be running from hostile fire, which we weren't, but it was just unbelievably hot and humid, and flew into Cam Bay, and we started from there.
And what was your day-to-day like in Vietnam? What kind of missions were you flying?
Well, I was a reconnaissance pilot, and which flew Loaches, the light observation helicopters,
Hmm.
and we were flying hunter killer teams, and we would locate the enemy, and Cobras would save us
Right.
from doom and destruction. And I got shot up a lot. I had two wingmen shot down.
Wasn't that kind of your job? I mean, it took me years and years and years to figure out that when you're flying reconnaissance in Vietnam, you're actually flying around waiting to get shot at so that, right, a Cobra could identify who's doing the shooting and go get them.
Yeah, that was it.
That was it.
Yeah, trying to locate the enemy and It wasn't that hard. We could find it. And normally, they would fire at us, and the Cobras would break us free, and
Wow.
we'd go from there.
Did you get scared?
You know, we talked about that, and when you're in a combat situation and people are shooting, no, it's things are going so fast, and you're reacting and doing what you need to do. And no, at that time I wasn't afraid. It's afterwards when you sit down and start to think about how close you came in a lot of situations. Uh, we talked about afraid just wasn't the right word, and it would work on you how close you came, but that was what I experienced.
Could you tell me about the day that you first laid eyes on Diane, the Donut Dolly of your dreams?
Well, she was and is. I had been moved up from the aircraft troop. I was a standardization instructor pilot, and I'd been moved up to the division headquarters, and I'd been out. I'd been giving a check ride, and I walked into the big mess hall, and there were 4 or 5, 6 donut dollies sitting in there.
And this is Camp Eagle?
Yeah, yes, Camp Eagle outside of Da Nang.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just picked out the cutest one and went up and sat down and had lunch with her and the rest of them. And I'd flown down to Cameron for some kind of Army business, and somehow we started talking about things. The 101st was not as far north, but almost as far north as you could go. And we were at the end of a supply line. Everything we got the supplies that you were supposed to get, but you didn't get a choice of things. You only got things like Pabst Blue Ribbon beer or Right Guard deodorant, whatever it was. Everything had been picked over.
Right.
And so while I was there, I picked up a couple of cans of Arid Right Guards.
Arid Extra Dry.
Oh,
Excuse me.
yeah.
Arid Extra Dry deodorant, an orange and yellow can.
So in the conversation, we talked about things that we'd like but couldn't get, and so I told her I had 2 cans, and that I would give her a can, Arid Extra Dry, and it turned out to be a really good deal.
May I interject?
Yes. Yeah, let's get your version, Diane.
That's everything he said was absolutely the truth. I said, for instance, I can't find any Arid Extra Dry deodorant. I was stationed first in Da Nang. I couldn't find it in the PX there. Anyway, and he said, well, I have 2 cans. So after lunch, he walked me across the dirt road to his hooch, and I stood out in the road, and he went up into his hooch and came out, and it was elevated up above the thing, and he holds up this can of Arid Extra Dry and says, Diane Zetterval, on behalf of myself and General Zais and the entire 101st Airborne Division, I present you with this can of Arid Extra Dry deodorant. And I was just going, oh, I hope nobody sees this. But I think that I started to fall in love with him right there because he was so funny.
Isn't that great? So how long did you stay at Camp Eagle, Diane?
I was there probably 3 months. It was my second real assignment. I'd had 1 assignment and 1 TDY before that. So that was July that I got to Camp Eagle, and I left in July, August, September. Yeah, probably left in late September, early October.
So you were able to see each other quite often then, I would imagine, right? I mean, I know that you were both out doing doing your work, but occasionally were you able to see each other at Camp
Oh,
Eagle?
yeah. We were, our office, our Red Cross office was right next to the mess hall, and we were housed in 3 long house trailers in a horseshoe inside the general's compound, headquarters compound. And Ben's hooch was right across from it. We saw each other at every night at dinner, and we went to the movie every night, and we went for long walks and got to know each other. And that's, you don't really date in Vietnam, but that's how we got involved with one another.
Was it legal for you to date and fall in love in Vietnam?
Yes, we were warned to be careful because there would have been married men who would hit on you, but that never happened to me, and I'm grateful. And I mean, we were warned to check
Right.
on and those kinds of things, but
But it
it was
wasn't forbidden in any way.
no, not at all.
No. Okay. You have I found some wonderful pictures also of you here, Diane. This is you getting off I think a Huey helicopter.
Oh, probably, yeah, I guess I've never seen this one.
Oh, you've never seen it? Okay, I found this online, and I love the
Those were my,
patch there.
that was my favorite, personal favorite mode of transportation was the helicopters. And I never flew with Ben. That wasn't his job to transport us.
Right. And I also came across this one. This is a little more disturbing, I guess. Looks like you're coming down on a rainstorm, maybe a monsoon.
Yes, it was after a night spent in a cave at Firebase Rendezvous on the rim of the Ashaw Valley because we were taken out, my companion at that time, Betsy Tanner, and I were taken out to do a program, a game program in the late afternoon, and they started taking fire, and the helicopter couldn't get back to get us out. And so they put us in a cave, which they had converted to a command headquarters overnight. And this was the next morning, and it rained all night, and there was fire all night. And I mean, rockets, enemy fire.
Yeah.
And it was that next morning, the helicopter's pad was down below where we stayed in the cave, and this was coming down. My companion took that, evidently.
So you served with Betsy Tanner. I didn't realize that you two were traveling together.
Well, as girls, as Donut Dollies, we went out in pairs to do programming. And by programming, I mean the games that we designed to involve the men would
Right.
spend an hour with each unit, with several units during the day.
Were you scared?
I'm sure I was. There were several different incidences. That was probably the closest one. And I didn't even know until 3 months ago what it was that was firing on it when Ben told me it was a whole North Vietnamese battalion. And he knew about it, but he didn't know that I was one of the Donut Dollies stuck out there.
Wow.
Anyway, so we felt safe in the cave, and you can tell them what they did.
They had to keep C-130 Smokies gunship over them all night to keep them from being overrun. Whoever sent them, that's as far forward as you can get.
Yeah.
And whoever sent them out there was out of their mind.
Right.
But it all turned out.
One thing that happened is I believe you, Ben, got then reassigned, or you left Camp Eagle, correct?
Diane got reassigned.
Yeah.
Oh, Diane did. Okay.
Yeah, I stayed at Camp Eagle and you got reassigned.
I got promoted to program director and went to Nha Trang with the 5th Special Forces, and we went out from there to several different places. And then I was promoted again to unit/program director and went to Phan Rang Air Base, further south still than that. And Ben came to see me at Christmas. And that's when we got officially engaged with a ring and all.
How
Christmas
great.
9.
I did not realize Betsy was with us. Hello, Betsy.
Hello.
You took the picture that I just showed.
Yes.
What can you,
I may have taken both of those pictures.
Oh, you probably did.
well, first of all, here's the wedding picture. Ben, I don't know if you guys have like realized that, but you're a lot taller than Diane.
You think?
We're
How-
sitting down now. We're the same height, our torsos. That's what we figured.
How great. And Betsy, you took this photograph.
Yes.
Do you remember being scared that night in the cave?
Not really. We kind of just took everything as it came. We always say, we now say we were too naive to really be scared of what we were doing out there. In retrospect, we maybe should have been scared.
Right. Yeah, I think fear would have been warranted, Betsy.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you were young, and this was the first time, and how would you know?
Right.
So you two, by the time, Diane, that you left and were reassigned, you were enough of a couple that you knew that you were going to get married.
Well, yeah. Yes, Ben had proposed to me one night while we were waiting to go to the movie. I was working in the office, and we came out to go over to the movie, and it was dark. And he said, if you marry me, I'll give you a jar of olives. I love pimento stuffed olives. And at night he would wear an old jumpsuit, flight suit, not the ones that they wore during the day. And I thought about it for a minute, and I said, okay. I mean, just about like that. Okay. And so he pulled a long skinny jar of pimento stuffed olives out of one pocket and handed it to me. And I smiled and said, thank you. And then he pulled one out of another pocket. And pretty soon I'm standing there with 4 jars of pimento stuffed olives, and I knew I was in trouble. He's such a funny guy. And I tell him, looks aren't everything.
How fantastic. And Betsy, it just came to me, I'm going to be so rude, so downright rude, and I'm just going to say it. Betsy, you were with Diane when Ben met Diane, right? And when they first started talking in the mess hall.
Correct. And I did kind of have a funny story. We worked our trip, our day was scheduled ahead of time, and we had a not to be missed departure date from there was a chopper pad right outside the mess hall. And so we would get up there and get breakfast and eat breakfast and get up and get ready to go. Ben seemed to be on a little bit later schedule. So he would bring his tray down over to where we were sitting and asked if he could join the ladies. And we said, of course, you're welcome to join us. And then we'd get up and leave. And so about the 3rd or 4th morning, he finally said to one of us, have I done something wrong? We said, no, our helicopter's going to be here. We have to go. And the other story about the two of them is I caught them in our office. Diane was standing on a stool so she could be face to face with Ben, and they were having a little mouthy,
Little time together.
little kissy
Yeah.
hug. Yeah.
Yeah. How
So
fun.
they compensated on the height really well.
Great. These stories are so wonderful. And before I could go on, go ahead, Betsy.
Well, Rosemary Thunder Schwobel is also on here, and she was stationed with us. She was one of we 6. Rosemary and I came in country together, worked at 101st together, and left together in September of '69. So she may have a Ben and Diane story also.
Okay, Rosemary Thunder Schwobel with the greatest name ever. If you want to unmute and chime in. Hi, Rosemary. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Hey, it's good to see Diane and Ben. Wow.
Rosemary.
I don't know if I have a particular story.
Okay.
We weren't working together very long because when I was in Fubai when we moved to Camp Eagle. So we weren't actually at Camp Eagle, Betsy and I, very long before we left country.
I glanced. Oh, I'm sorry.
I think we were about 2 months. I think we moved in mid-July into
Yeah.
Camp, and then we left in September 9th or something like that.
Have any of you been back to Fubai, Camp Eagle, that area?
Not me.
No,
No,
Ben and Diane, you have not.
No,
No. I glanced in the chat, Mary Klepper, Deb Bussinger, they were chatting back and forth because Deb Bussinger and Mary Klepper were on our trip to Vietnam in 2023. And we were there. We flew into Fubai and we drove past Camp Eagle, which is now part of a Vietnamese military base, and they do not like you Americans sniffing around there. So we had to kind of drive by and look and, get a sense of what the place was about. But it was really, really neat after hearing these 101st Airborne stories to be there, to be near where you guys were. So yeah, that was right near where we were, Mary and Deb. I just wanted, before I let you go, I don't want the, Donut Dollies once again to hijack our program. I'm kidding. Before we let you go, I do want to let people know that Ben stayed in the Army. You made a career of it. You retired as Lieutenant Colonel in the 1980s, 22 years, which meant that you and Diane raised your 7 kids in a military family, and you moved around the world, moved around the country. What was that, in retrospect, what was that experience like for you, Diane?
well, it was wonderful. I enjoyed it. I looked forward to all the different places that we saw, and we made many new friends, including some Germans when we were in Germany, and saw a good portion of the world. It was,
how many moves?
I think we've figured, I 17 moves, but some of those have been since we've been out of the military. We've moved an average of every 2 years, 2.5 years, a couple of 6 months assignments. So it's all relative. No.
I just read today we publish a magazine, VBC magazine, and we have a number of people who take submissions, and I just read a submission today, an excerpt from a book about it's from the perspective of a military wife, and about the 1960s, and she has to get the family to move out of the quarters where they're living. And it's all about, the excerpt that was sent to me was all about the final inspection and to make sure the final, the place was clean, and what a stressful event that was. Do you remember having to go through the final inspection of your house before you moved?
Yes, we do, especially when we were in quarters, which was several times. Yeah, but yeah, it was always a little bit stressful.
And
But
I like that excerpt because it gave me a perspective that I had never really considered before, which is of the,
Well, it was a two-way street in that when you moved in to military quarters, they were clean, everything was operational, and good. You could do it yourself, or you could hire a cleaning team.
That's right.
Believe you me, they were worth their money. They earned their money. We did it ourselves several times, but you really had to get it right.
Yep, exactly. And that's funny because in the excerpt I read, an older military wife said, like, honey, you definitely want to hire the cleaning service. Don't try and do this yourself. It's too much. How terrific. Thank you both for joining us, Ben and Diane. What a pleasure to have you on. And I love that you're wearing pink for the occasion.
thank you. Yeah, it's Valentine's Day coming up, right?
That's right. That's right. You were in the spirit of it. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.